Hi, today I'm going to show you how to draft a fitted bodice block. The fitted bodice block is also known as the close fitting block, and it's the base block or sloper that we use for much of our flat pattern work. To create this block, you're going to need either a set of personalised body measurements, or you can use the industry standard measurements that I'm going to give you, which will give you the equivalent of a US 6/8 size, which is my New Zealand Australia size 10. Now this is the block I make all my sample garments off, and this is the block that will produce a sample size for a fit model. If you want to use this block to create garments for the runway, you're probably going to need to size it down one. So I suggest what you do is either use your own measurements or you refer to the measurements on my measurement size chart for the industry standards. The equipment you're going to need is the standard flat pattern making equipment. You're going to need a 40cm set square. You're going to need a metre long ruler. A tape measure is handy. Also your mechanical pencil and a good quality eraser, as well as pattern making card. The process that we follow to draft this fitted block can get a little bit complex, so don't worry if it does start to become a bit overwhelming. You can simply visit the website and download the pre-fitted block that you can print on your home computer and then transfer to pattern making card. So here's a list of the measurements that you're going to need. We're going to start off drafting the base area for our block to put our measurements in. So with a nice long ruler, draw a horizontal line on a new sheet of pattern making card. The beginning point of this line, just mark in as point 0. Now we need to square a line off point 0 down vertically, and this is going to represent the centre back of our block. So with your set square, turn it so the set square is facing like so, and this line in the middle of your set square needs to touch and sit on that line we've just drawn. So once you've got it in this position here, we're going to do what's called squaring off a line. And once you've drawn the start of that line that we're going to square off, you can take your long ruler and extend that line through your pattern card. So all we do is use this line to extend like so. Now using the measurements on our set square, come to point 0 and measure down 1.5 centimetres and place a small mark. And when that mark's in place, label that mark number 1. Now we need to know the armhole depth. So come to your chart and find your armhole depth measurement and add 0.5 centimetre to it. So I have 21 plus 0.5 centimetre is 21.5. So from point 1, measure down that amount. So I'm going to use my set square as a ruler to measure down 21.5 centimetres and place another small mark, and this mark becomes pattern making mark number 2. Once you have number 2 in position, we need to square a line horizontally across. So take your set square and place it like this, with this centre line running through like this, and make sure the top of your set square is on point number 2, and we're going to do what's called squaring a line across. So we're going to use our set square to start drawing a line, and then we're going to take our long ruler and extend that line further. So we want to make sure that that line is nice and straight and parallel to the line above, and when you're ready, just extend that line. So the first line we marked in was our centre back. So this line here is going to represent the centre back of our block. And we need to work out where the centre front is. And this is where our bust measurement comes into it. find your bust measurement, and I have 88 centimetres, and halve it or divide it in two. So half of 88 for me is 44. Now we're going to add some ease in for wearing comfort, and a standard amount of ease for a bust is 5 centimetres or 2 inches. So 44 plus 5 is 49. So come to point 2 and measure across that amount. And I have 49, but of course you might have a different amount. So you can use either your long ruler or your tape measure, but if you come to that line number 2, measure across, place your mark, and this is what we're going to square off to create the centre front of our block. So take your set square and just turn it around so it's facing like this, and place that line through the centre of your set square on this line here. And now we're just going to draw a line up and down vertically off that mark we've created to create the front of our block. So mark this line somewhere on it as centre front, and where this line intersects here, mark that in as pattern making point 3. And when you follow that line up to the upper line, the first line we drew in, just mark that in as pattern making point 4. Now you need your nape to waist measurement. Now nape means the point at the back of the neck. My nape to waist measurement here is 40 centimetres. So nape to waist comes from point 1, because point 1 is the nape point. So whatever measurement you have, use your ruler or your tape measure to measure down and place a small pattern making mark like so, and that is going to become point 5. Then use your set square, and you can either use it like this on the centre back line, or you can use it like this. So we want the middle of the set square to touch the centre back line and the upper part of the set square to touch our pattern making mark. And we're just going to draw a line across, and this line, as I said, is going to represent our waistline. And where it touches the centre front becomes pattern making point 6. And at this point it's a really good idea to just mark in the word waistline, because we're going to get a few markings on our pattern making card and you don't want to get too confused. Now we need our waist to hip point, and my waist to hip is 20.6 centimetres. So come to point 5 and measure down 20.6 centimetres and place a pattern making mark. And if you haven't quite drawn your block long enough, like I haven't, you can just extend that slightly. So that becomes point 7. And now we're going to square a line across towards the other side to be point 8. So just use your set square again to draw in a nice straight line, and you can extend this with either your long ruler, or you can just slowly work your way across with a set square like I do. So when you reach this side, mark this in as pattern point number 8. So now we have the base area of our draft ready to start putting in the measurements for our back block. To find position 9, we need the neck circumference measurement, which is the neck size. My neck size is 37 centimetres, but whatever measurement you have, divide it by 5, then whatever answer you get, take away 0.2 of a centimetre. Now when I do that, I'm left with 7.2 centimetres. So when you have that measurement, come to this line from 0 and measure across and place a small mark there. So I'm going to do that at 7.2, and that's position number 9. And now we need to draw in the curve for the back of the neck. So what we do is just by eye, nice and gently, draw a curve from position 1 towards position 9. Now we need the armhole depth measurement. My armhole depth is 21 centimetres. Divide it by 5, then take away 0.7. Now when I do that, I'm left with 3.5 centimetres. So I'm going to come to point 1 and measure down 3.5 centimetres from 1 and place a small pattern making mark, which is point number 10, and mark that in as point 10. Now because this is the curve of the shoulder we're putting in, we need to square a line to approximately halfway along your pattern making card. So with your set square, place that on the centre back line with the top of the set square on position 10 and just draw in a line across. We're going to start putting in point 11. Point 11 is going to be the end of the shoulder line. So find your shoulder length measurement, and I have 12.25 centimetres, and then add 1 centimetre to that. So 12.25 plus 1 is 13.25. To mark in the shoulder line, we place our set square so the 0 point, or the centre point of the long edge of our set square, is on position 9. Then we need to angle the set square until the amount we have touches the line we've just squared off. So at the moment this is touching at 11 centimetres, and I need to make mine 13.25. So I'm simply going to tilt my set square out like this until I get to 13.25 centimetres. And I'm going to draw my line in like this, and I'm going to mark that as position 11. And now we're going to mark in the back shoulder dart. So what we need to do is to find the centre of that line. So whatever length you had, divide it by 2 and just place a small mark in the centre of that line. So that position we marked in is position 12. And it's going to be the centre of our back shoulder dart. So let's create the shoulder dart. Place your set square so that the line here touches the line from 0 to 4, so the top line. And make sure the side of the set square here goes through that centre point you've just marked, the 12 point. What we need to do is draw a guideline in 5 centimetres long. So I'm just going to use a dashed line to draw a line down, and I want to make sure that that line is 5 centimetres long. So when I measure that off again, I'm just going to mark it in 5 centimetres like so. But I need my dart to slope towards the centre back, so now I'm going to change my set square and place it on that dotted line and measure towards the centre back 1 centimetre. So that position there, 5 centimetres down and 1 centimetre in, is the point of my dart. I need to construct a dart that is 1 centimetre wide at the top, because if you remember we added a centimetre to the shoulder line. Now we're going to reduce it with the dart. So mark half a centimetre or 5 millimetres either side of point 12. So you can just use your set square to do that. And then join each of those lines towards that position we've marked in. So you're just going to use the point of the dart to go that way and the point of the dart to go this way. Make sure you mark the point of that dart in as position 13. Next we need the back width measurement. My back width is 34.4 centimetres. Whatever measurement you have for the back width, divide it by 2. So with a calculator or in your head, just halve that amount, then add 0.5 of a centimetre to it. The measurement you're left with, and I have 17.7, come to position 2 and measure along that line and place that mark in. And that is position 14. And next we're going to square a line up from 14 towards 15. So with your set square, place it on the line of 2 with the front of the set square on 14 and draw a line up, and where that line hits the line from 10, that is position 15. Now we need to measure the line we've just drawn in, and I have 18 centimetres, but whatever length you have, divide it by 2 and mark that halfway point. And when you mark that halfway point, that is going to be position 16. Now we need to measure 2 to 14, and whatever measurement you have, divide it by 2 and place a mark in the middle, and that is position 17. Then using your set square, place it on the 2, 3 line, making sure the front of the set square is on 17, and I'm just going to dash a line down, and where it intersects number 5, 6 line, that is going to be my position 18, and then I'm going to extend it all the way down to the hip line, and the next line is going to become my position 19. Now it's time to start working on the front of the block, and we'll start with the neck. Find your neck size, and I have 37, but whatever measurement you have, divide it by 5, then take away 0.7 of a centimetre. Now I'm left with 6.7, but whatever measurement you have, come to position 4, measure across that amount and place a pattern making mark. That position is position 20, and for position 21, take the same neck measurement, so I had 37, divide it by 5, then take away 0.2, and I'm left with 7.2, and come to position 4 and measure down that amount and place a mark, and that is position 21. So 20 and 21 are our front neck. So what we need to do is just draw a nice curve between 20 and 21, and you can just use your eraser to remove any parts of it that look a little bit strange until you're comfortable that the front neck curve is drawn in nicely. Next, find your chest measurement and divide it by 2. So I have 32.4, halve that, then add to it half a centimetre or 0.5, and I'm left with 16.7 centimetres. Come to position 3 and measure across and place a mark at 16.7 centimetres, and that mark is position 22. At this point, we're going to square up a small way from 22 as a guideline that we're going to use later. So place your set square like this on the 2, 3 line with the front of the set square on 22, and just draw a small square line up that we'll use later. Now we need to find the midway point between 3 and 22. So if you measure that with your set square and then place a mark halfway along. That is position 23. Now we need to take our set square and place it on that 2-3 line with the front of the set square on 23, and we're going to dash a line down to the waistline, and that's going to become position 24, and we're going to continue that line through to the hip line. So you can just extend that all the way through to the hip line, and where it touches the hip line is position 25. Now it's time to draw in the bust point. The bust point sits on this dotted line 2.5 centimeters down from 23. So place your set square or your measuring tape on 23 and 2.5 centimeters down. Place a mark, but make sure you mark that in as a bust point. And then what we're going to do is draw the front dart in. So that bust point there, I've labelled BP as bust point. It's also point 26. And what we need to do is draw a line from the point of the bust through to position 20. So from 26 to 20 we need to draw a line. Now we've already pre-decided that our dart width is 7 centimeters. So from point 20 we're going to measure along 7 centimeters and place a mark, and that's going to become position 27, and we're going to join position 27 through to 26, which is our bust point, like so. Now position 28 is a little bit tricky. We need to place our set square so it's on this line 10, 11, and that the point or the front of our set square is on point 11, and 1.5 centimeters down from point 11 we need to place a mark, and that's going to be position 28. So I'll just take that away. So that's going to be 28 there. Now I'm going to draw a guideline from 11 to 28, and you may need to extend this guideline. It's so we can square another line off the line like so from 28, and we're going to extend that line 10 centimeters towards the center front, and that's going to become position 29. So the reason we've drawn this guideline in is to put our back shoulder line in, or the curve of the shoulder in. So now we need to find our shoulder length measurement, which is 12.25 centimeters. And just like we did earlier, we're going to put the center of our set square on point 27, and we're going to angle the set square until it touches this 28-29 line at the length of our shoulder. So I'm just going to curve that in until that becomes 12.25 centimeters, and I'm going to draw the line like that, and where it intersects becomes point 30. Now we need to measure the distance from point 3 to point 21, and when you have that amount, divide it by 3. Then take that measurement and measure up from line 22 and mark that in. That mark is position 31. Now we're going to measure the distance between 14 and 22 and find the midway point. So simply measure that and divide it by 2 and place a mark, and wherever you place that mark, that is point 32. And then from 32 we're going to square off towards the waistline with a dotted line, dropping it down, and that becomes point 33. And we're going to extend that line all the way through to the hip line, and where it touches the hip line is going to become my point 34. So we're almost ready to draw the armhole in. We just need some more guidelines. So for the back of our block, as a guideline, we want to come in about 2.5 centimeters from 14 at about the midway point, so about 45-degree angle. And from 22, which is the front part of the block, we want to come in about 2 centimeters. So if we just put some guidelines in, that will help us sketch in the armhole. So to draw in the armhole, start at 11 and draw a curve through to 16. Through 16 we want to touch the mark we've just drawn, 2.5 centimeters up from 14. And just remember, we're just doing these by eye. We want to curve them just smoothly, and you can adjust these later. From this point here we want to come to point 32, and then from 32 we want to come back to this mark we drew from 22, and you will find it a little bit easier drawing the curve on one side of your block to the other, depending if you're right or left-handed. And then from that mark there we want to come up through 31, so we have a steeper curve on the front of the block than we do on the back. And bear in mind, you can just keep adjusting these until they're nice and smooth. And then from 31 we want to come back to point 30 here. So we'll be drawing our curve in like so. As a standard, our waistline shaping is 12 centimeters, and we apportion this between the centre back, the side seam and the centre front of the block. So what we do is we apportion this so that there is 3.5 centimeters for the back dart, a total of 4 centimeters at the side seam, and we have 4.5 centimeters for the front dart. So let's mark these in, and just remember that waist darts are used for shaping at the waist only. We come to the waistline and we want to divide the 3.5 centimeters for the back dart, half to the back and half to the front. So what we need to do is put 1.75 centimeters to the back and 1.75 centimeters to the front, and then we join these marks towards point 17, and that becomes our back dart shaping. Now let's move on to the back side seam. We allow 1.5 centimeters to the back. So come to point 33, measure 1.5 centimeters, and then join that point up to point 32. Next we want to allow 2.5 centimeters to the front side seam. So we're going to come to 33, measure 2.5 centimeters from 33 and join that to point 32. So if you measured this across, there would be a total of 4 centimeters across in that dart. And lastly, we want to work with the front dart, which is 4.5 centimeters. So we want to divide that 4.5 centimeters evenly over point 24. So we put 2.2 to the back and 2.2 to the front. And now generally we join these lines up to the bust point, which is 26. But what it can do is give a very pointed effect. So realistically, the best thing to do is measure down about 1.5 to 2 centimeters from 26 and place a small mark, and we're going to join that position to each of our dart legs here. Now that just gives a softer look to the front of the bodice. Now we need to extend the darts towards the hip line. The side seam dart extends all the way down to the hip line, so we're going to join this mark here with point 34, and we're going to do the same on the other side. Now in general, the front and the back darts get extended 13 centimeters long, but this is personal and it will depend on your fit. And of course you do need to make this up in a calico and fit it before you finalize your block. But on average, if you measure down this line here from 24, 13 centimeters, and place a mark, and then join that mark up with either side of your markings like so, and do the same with the back, so down from 18, 13 centimeters, and join that point with either side of the dart leg. It's a really good start to fitting this block. Once you've reached this stage, congratulations on completing the front and the back draft of the close fitting bodice block. We always keep our main draft intact. So what you need to do now is take a new sheet of pattern making card, slide it underneath this, and then with your tracing wheel, trace around the outside so you can complete a block to start fitting it off. Once you've completed that block with your tracing wheel, sketch over it with your mechanical pencil, and then you'll need to add some seam allowances and cut this out of a toile fabric such as calico, and you'll need to fit this. So you might need to adjust the waist shaping or the length of the darts, but this is the main part of the draft completed. Next we're going to move on to drafting the sleeve, and we need this main block here to draft the sleeve from. So when you're ready, get your arm sleeve length measurement and we'll get started on the sleeve draft. One more thing, when you trace off this block and create the front and back pieces, make sure you curve or true up these side seams, because you want to make sure there's a nice smooth fit at the waist. And in addition to this, make sure you draw in the waistline, because this is an area that you'll want to create notches for. To create the sleeve, we use the measurements from the draft we've just made. Now the main measurement we're going to need is called the arm side, and this is the arm side here. The arm side is defined as the area that the sleeve is sewn into on the body of the garment. So we have the front arm side and the back arm side. And don't get it confused with the sleeve cap. Because of ease, the sleeve cap always has more of a measurement in it. So with the front arm side, we have point 31, which is the front arm side point, and point 16, which is the back arm side point. So let's start from the beginning. Most of the sleeve is drafted from arm side measurements. To take the arm side measurement, you take your tape measure, and we're going to use it on its side, on the narrow edge. So what you need to do is start at the back or the front, it's up to you, and place this tape measure on its side and slowly walk your way around it, curving it right the way through until you get back to the front shoulder point here. And you'll be left with a measurement, and that measurement will be particular to you. If I give you the measurement here now, it will be somewhat different from what you've done depending on the curves you've put in. So once you have that arm side measurement, write that down and we'll get started. So I'm going to complete this sleeve draft in blue so you can see the difference between the original draft and the sleeve draft. Take your set square, and we want to draw a line touching point 31. So we need a perpendicular line, and we always square that off one of our horizontal lines. So if you place your set square on perhaps the line 2 to 3, so the centre of the set square is running there, and so the outside of the set square touches point 31, draw a perpendicular line in like so. Now we need to take our arm side measurement, and that's the entire arm side measurement, divide it by 3, then deduct half a centimetre, and you'll be left with a measurement. So that's arm side divided by 3 equals minus 0.5. When you have that measurement, start off by marking point 1, and point 1 is exactly the same as point 22. So we're just going to mark point 1 there. Then with that measurement, measure up from point 1 that measurement you have. And when you do that, place a small pattern making mark, and that becomes point 2. Now we want to square a line from point 2 towards the centre back. So with your set square like this, on the line you've just created, and the top of your set square touching point 2, draw a square line across. Now point 3 is halfway between 1 and 2. So whatever measurement you had, divide it by 2 and place a mark at the halfway point, and that becomes point 3. And then with your set square on that original line with the top of it on point 3, square a line across towards the back, and where it touches the back, that becomes point 4. Now we need to measure the distance from 1 to 3, and point 5 is the halfway point. So if you measure 1 to 3, put a pattern making mark halfway through and label that point 5. Next, where point 30 is, that is also going to be our sleeve point 6. So just mark the shoulder point here as point 6. Next, with your tape measure, we want to measure the distance on the curve from point 6 through to point 5. Now if your point 5 is slightly separated from the armhole here, just make sure there's a horizontal line between the two. So with your tape measure on its side, measure on the curve from 5 through to 6. So you'll need to step that out slowly to get that measurement. When you have that measurement, add 1 centimetre to it. Then take your set square and the 0 point of the set square place on point 5. And what we want to do is angle the set square up to the line we drew from 2, the horizontal line. So tilt your set square like this until the line touches at the measurement you've got. So that's that measurement plus 1 centimetre from 5. So when you've got that angle correct and that's the right measurement, place a small mark, and that is going to be the top of the sleeve mark. Label that point as point 7, and then place your set square like this on that line from 2 with the outside of the set square touching point 7, and drop a line vertically towards the bottom of the block. So this is the center of our sleeve, like so. Point 8 is the back shoulder point here. So if you mark that in as point 8, and then we want to measure from point 4 to point 8 on the curve. So yet again, place your tape measure on its side starting at the top and curve it down until you reach the measurement of point 4. And when you have that measurement, add 1 centimetre to it. Now you're going to need to extend this line from 3 towards 4 a little bit further. And once you've done that, place the center of your set square on point 7, and we're going to angle it down until that line we've just extended touches at the measurement we've just made. So if it's too long, you can tilt it like this. If it's too short, you can make it longer. So angle that, making sure the 0 point is on number 7, and just angle it until you have that measurement plus 1 centimetre, and then place your pattern making mark there, and that becomes point 9. Point 10 is the underarm balance point here. It's the same point as point 32, but just mark that in as point 10 here. Now with your tape measure again, we're going to measure 5 through to 10. So place your tape measure on point 5 and run it through the curve until you get to point 10. When you have that measurement, deduct 0.3 of a centimetre from it. When you have that measurement, place your set square with the centre of that set square on point 5 and angle it towards this line 2 to 3 until you have that measurement, and you will find it curves out like this, and place your mark there, and wherever you place your mark, that becomes point 11. For point 12, measure the curve from 4 to 10 on the angle. So take your tape measure and step that through, and when you have that measurement, deduct 0.3 of a centimetre. Then place the 0 point of your set square on point number 9 and angle that until you have that measurement, and that measurement touches the line 2 to 3. So that is point 12. Now when you're completing the sleeve draft, the waistline becomes the elbow line as well. So I'll just write elbow there so you know. So the waistline becomes the elbow line. So now we need our sleeve length measurement. And what we want to do is measure down from point 7 the length of your sleeve. And the length of my sleeve is 58.4 centimetres. So you might not have extended this line long enough, and I haven't. So what you can do is use your set square to extend this line down, and then take your tape measure or your long ruler and place it on point 7 and come down the length that you want the sleeve to be, and just place a pattern making mark there. And then with your set square, we want to square a line horizontally across. So place your set square on that line 7 like this and draw a line across. Now we want to square down from point 11, so place your set square on the line 2, 3 with the front of the set square touching point 11 and square down. And just continue that line until it touches the wrist level we've just drawn here. And we're going to do the same with point 12. Place your set square on the 2, 3 line with the front of the set square touching point 12 and draw a line down with your set square and just continue that line down until it touches that wrist level like so. So we're almost finished. What we need to do now is join a line from 9 to 12, just a straight line. And once you've drawn that line, around about halfway, measure in 3/4 of a centimetre, so 0.75 of a centimetre, and just place a small mark, because what we want to do is eventually we're going to be curving this in. Then we want to join a line from 9 to 7, a nice straight line, and around about halfway along that, join a little mark 1 centimetre out, because we want to be curving that point out. Next, draw a line from 7 to 5, and you need to measure this line. So find out that measurement and divide it by 3. And when you have that measurement, place a mark in at that measurement. Then we want to measure 2 centimeters away from that line because we want to curve the sleeve out there. Then join point 5 to point 11 with a straight line, and around about halfway along that line, come down 1 centimeter and place a small mark there. Now we're going to do some truing up to draw in the sleeve head, and this is very much a matter of doing this by eye because French curves don't really help you too much with this. So starting at point 12, we want to curve a line towards point 9. So we're going in and we want to come back out at point 9, and we want to go out towards that 1 centimeter line there until we touch point 7 at the sleeve head. Then we're going to curve through point 7 to that little dot we placed around about 1/3 of the way along, and we're going to bring that line back in towards point 5, and point 5 we're going to curve in towards the mark we placed halfway along and back out towards point 11. So when you've finished just sketching this in, you can go over this and make sure it's all nicely smoothed out. Now what we've drafted is a very straight sleeve, so what you can do is if you want a slight amount of shaping, you can come in 2.5 centimeters or so at the side seam. So you can just come in 2.5 centimeters on each side, or less or more depending on what you like, and then you can join a line from that point back up to point 11. And we can do the same thing on the other side from that point up to point 12. Now this gives us a wrist level that is nice and straight. If you want to use this to create a shirt block or a lady's blouse block, we need to add some shaping at the wrist line. What we do is we measure the distance from the center point here to the outside, and we place a mark halfway along it. So measure from this point here to the halfway point and place a small mark. And we're going to hollow this down at the back of the sleeve 1 centimeter. And we're going to do the same at the front, but we're going to shape this up at the front. So measure from the center point to the outside of the sleeve and place a mark at the halfway point, and we're going to measure up 1 centimeter and place a small mark. So what we do now is we shape this the same as we did here by eye, just truing it up. From our outside point we want to go down slightly towards our mark, and then from our mark we want to shape that back up towards the center of the sleeve, and we're going to shape this point here up to that little mark and then back down again towards the outside seam. So now's a good time to talk about the notch positions. The front notch is position 5, so that would be 1 notch here, and the back double notches are position 9, so it's always a good idea to place your notch 5 millimeters on either side of that number 9 so that your double notches are 1 centimeter apart. As well as that, you're going to need a notch at the elbow point, and we will transfer these notches through to the front and the back draft as well, so that when the sleeve sews in, the sleeve notch sews into the front there, and the double notches on the sleeve sew into the back there. So what needs to be done now is a new sheet of pattern making card needs to be slid under here, and this pattern needs to be traced around. You need to add a seam allowance and cut it out of muslin, and then sew this sleeve into the front and back block. Once you've sewn this together, you can put this on a tailor's dummy or dress form or on a fit model, and check it for fit. Now just remember, we haven't added any allowance here for shoulder pads. So if you want to create a block that has a shoulder pad allowance, you'll need to refer to my video on that. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. There are more videos to come.